Every year, billions of gallons of petroleum commodities travel throughout North America's extensive rail network, spanning more than 140,000 miles. An essential commercial event that occurs during the transaction of petroleum commodities transported through the railroads is the transmittal of a shipment document known as a bill of lading. The bill of lading, BOL, is sent from the seller to the buyer with information about the product that is on the tank car to document the transaction along with properties of the product, and more importantly, the volume or quantity that was loaded onto the tank car. If the buyer agreed to purchase 30,000 gallons of X product at a rate of $1 per gallon from a seller, when the seller loads a tank car, the BOL should state that 30,000 gallons of X product was loaded. A payment is then dispersed for $30,000 from the buyer to the seller. But how does the buyer validate the shipment quantity to ensure they are getting what they paid for? A simple analogy for this is when you fill your car with gasoline at a gas station. Wouldn't you want to make sure that if you pay for 12 gallons, you receive 12 gallons? To validate the quantity of volume stated on BOLs, many purchasers of petroleum products shipped with tank cars will gauge the car upon arrival. The gauging process of tank cars is simple, in theory. The most common method to gauge a tank car is to measure the distance between the top of the tank car and where the liquid level begins. This is called an outage level. Once you have this measurement, one needs to make sense of what an outage of 13 inches means regarding the volume of product within a tank car. This information is obtained from a gauge table. Gauge tables are provided by manufacturers of the tank car and distributed by the tank car operator via web applications. The buyer in the transaction scenario above must manually fetch every gauge table for every tank car they receive to validate each transaction. To make this process more laborious, there is not a one-size-fits-all gauge table for tank cars. They are all different. The gauge document retrieval process can consume 5 to 10 minutes of manual labor per tank car, depending on if the employee gets lucky identifying the correct operator's web application. Employees responsible for this process refer to the document retrieval process as a scavenger hunt when trying to locate the correct gauge table on the internet. It is obvious the process for acquiring gauge tables is extremely disorganized and inefficient. The solution: rather than having over 100 different web applications on the internet to search for gauge tables, why not consolidate it to one? Introducing railcartables.com. Railcar Tables provides direct access to a one-stop shop repository of railcar gauge table information, eliminating the laborious task of manually searching for gauge tables across the web. The best feature included with a Railcar Tables subscription is access to the Application Programming Interface, or API. The Railcar Tables API empowers developers to create custom integrations for further efficiency improvements of the tank car gauging process. Studies showed that rail terminals who utilize Railcar Tables were able to remove the gauge table retrieval and administration from their standard operating procedures, giving back rail terminal personnel 2.5 hours per day to work on more valuable tasks. You can get started with Railcar Tables in less than 5 minutes to start querying more than 250,000 compatible tank cars.